Hey, in the studio here is Joanne P. McCallie. She is a well-known women's basketball, collegiate women's basketball coach, very successful teams, both at the University of Maine, at Michigan State University, and also Duke. She coached for many years, very successfully, and she's written a book called Secret Warrior, which is a story of her struggles with bipolar disorder when she was being a coach, and now she has made it her thing that she wants to help people who have been struggling with mental disorders. And she's here to talk about what she's up to and what she's doing. The book is incredible. I've read it twice now. And every time, no, really, I have. I've read it twice. And every time I read it, there are nuggets that keep dropping out of it that are so wonderful. And I apply it to not the people that I talk to or work with. And it even helps me. That's who's here, and she's here to talk to her about her experience, her book, and a foundation that she's creating in mental health.
Thank you. Yes, it's great to be here, and especially on World Bipolar Day. I think it's timely that we're having this discussion on this day, and things have been very busy as we work towards not only selling books, but trying to expand to the academic world, the world of psychology in high school and in college, first-year residents in psychiatry, trying to take Secret Warrior as a real life experience and seeing how that can educate, lower stigmas. One of my hashtags, of course, is stories over stigmas. And part of that means being able to, if you're ready, and you have the opportunity to tell your story. And so Secret Warrior has been a lot about that. I'm doing book clubs, organizing Zooms, of course, and then I will be speaking publicly or on the speaking circuit, so to speak, to further things. So it's interesting. I want to say it's, Final Four time for women's basketball and for the men. And so for me, I'm still a coach, I'm still a coach. And so I had to come up with 4 hashtags that the reason why there are 4 is because of the Final Four. And so you can,
I've been following the basketball tournament. It's been very exciting. I'm an old UCLA guy.
Oh, okay.
And they've been hanging around.
Well, it's been very exciting. And so I've been enjoying it as well. And the women's basketball scene has really been beautiful, how it's been covered and how people are getting on the bandwagon of understanding that basketball is basketball. But getting back to the 4 hashtags, I'll just throw them out there so we
go ahead
out there. Stories over stigmas, obviously. Mentorship matters is very important because mentorship and how we mentor each other with mental health, I think, is critical. The third one is be good to you. I think many times we don't understand how we need to take care of ourselves, be good to ourselves in ways that we can seek balance. And then the last one is process to peace, and understanding it's a process, step by step, in terms of understanding your diagnosis, understanding your meds. And it's not, it's a process to peace of mind. And you cannot be overly concerned about the outcome, meaning the outcome, like, when am I going to get better? Or will I be the same? Because frankly, you will never be the same, but there's a betterment to chase. And so those are the 4 hashtags that me and my social folks have been putting on Twitter and whatnot to try to, use repetition to teach. That's another aspect of coaching, is repetition. So those are things that we've been working on.
Wow. Those are huge. Each one of those feel huge. I guess what you're talking about in terms of, let's take the last one, the process to peace. You're not obviously talking about the peace of the world. You're talking about some internal peace, some mental health issue around being peaceful inside yourself, how to find the ability to do that.
Yeah, peace, the process to peace of mind and sort of the celebration of the mind. We talk about brain health, but it's the mind is an incredible thing and its powers and abilities. And so without a doubt, we want it within ourselves. And then, hopefully though, with this world, bipolar day, the whole concept of, worldwide peace relative to people internally, because we have mental health as such an issue worldwide coming off the pandemic. What are the things that we're going to have to do next? And how are we going to treat each other, treat ourselves? And what will be the healthcare, what will be the situation in order to make sure we have more ability to reach out and give people the support they need?
Yeah, one of the associations I have to what you're talking about there is working with people who've been traumatized. And what happens is that pieces of ourselves get split off, and they almost feel like they're living in different parts of us. And maybe we've disconnected from those parts completely. And part of the work is to get them back together again so they feel completely whole, and then resolving the issues. Is that part of what you think about, is that when people have serious mental illness issues, that aspects or pieces of themselves get lost, and that they need to find their way back to joining and feeling like a whole person?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that trauma is something people can become aware of, can be aware of, or it has to be pulled from them relative to therapy. And there are many different traumas and triggers from my experiences and also reading that can ignite, the mental health issues and these combinations of genetics as well. It's a confluence of all these things. And that's why it's so important to have each element, as you have a therapist and a psychiatrist and how they work in concert. Because, I just feel like as I always say, I feel like I'm the most self-analyzed human relative to the years I've had in therapy or in psychiatry. And I just wish others, I think therapists are just great. I look forward to and treat myself to my therapist. She's outstanding.
Do you wish you had become one, a licensed therapist, or?
Yes, I think so. I think that my default to that is hoping to get my podcast where all people, young people in particular, but can call in anonymously. One of my dreams is to have a pharmaceutical firm that makes the medicine that I take back me, support me, allow this podcast to occur so that people could call in. And again, I'm not a psychologist or social worker or psychiatrist, but I am a coach.
Yes.
And I've been in a position to motivate others to take their meds or to be aware of their situation and their responsibilities. And so that's one of as we talk about the foundation, which is, again, you've got to get monies in to get that foundation going. That's there too. The podcast is right next to that relative to going forward. And I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and we've got the triangle here. And there are quite a few pharmaceuticals lurking about. Yeah.
And so you plan on knocking on their door?
Well, it would be so great if somebody would knock on my door.
Well, yeah.
But yes, I guess I have to knock on doors.
Maybe there's a way for other people to knock on the door for you.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I hope for that. I think about what I call quiet investors. People that don't say but just do, and it could be relative to anything. Getting on wonderful interviews like this one, or selling books or getting talks. There's
Well,
just,
I used to know the head of psychiatry at Duke, and for a number of years, he's a fantastic. He is a fantastic person, and I think he would be great if he would jump on it. But you probably have made inroads yourself in.
well, I wouldn't assume that. The only inroads with Duke has been with Fuqua. There's a wonderful person coming out of Fuqua who is an associate dean. And so she's communicated with me and my team. But just there's always room for more contacts, and there are never enough. So that's just FYI to anyone out there.
I know. I remember that you had made a contact with somebody. I think it was the cults, with the Baltimore cult. I mean, the Indianapolis cults, I should say. I'm old school, and there was some player who was talking about their program.
The president, Jim Irsay. I don't know him personally, and I wish I did. His Kick the Stigma campaign is really tremendous. And of course, he's in a position of great leadership. And he was so kind. I sent him Secret Warrior, and he sent me back a football jersey with
Okay.
McCallie, McCallie on the back. I kind of feel like part of the team, and a huge Colts fan at this point. But I really.
You are you saying?
Well, I am now. I mean, I don't.
Oh, now that you're. Yeah. Okay, I get it.
NFL football hasn't been my thing exactly.
I smell loyalty is gone right out the window if somebody's willing to make contact. Yeah. So you've made, and I would imagine that the owners of the cults are very aware of their program. I think it's Kicking the Stigma or something like that, which is part of what you want to happen, is people to not be as ashamed of having something going on with them, and be able to thereby seek out help of various kinds. But the stigma still exists. I would assume that's part of what you're going to be talking about in the future.
I think,
is that right?
We've had, the stigmas have been there, and of course they'll continue to some degree. But the more the stories are shared, and especially people like me who have had a public platform, and to be able to come out more, not just on the cover of a magazine that so and so is bipolar. It's like somebody's stricken, stricken in a way that doesn't allow them to be who they are. And so I'm not trying to, it's not all perfect, and there's so much that we go through, but there's another side. There's the other side, which is working through the issues and coming out on the other side a better and stronger person through adversity. And that's not pie in the sky. I mean, that's, no matter how people, the continuum is long, and wherever somebody falls on that continuum, they've got to hear stories and of public figures, of people that have managed. I mean, that's one of the good reasons that I waited so long, actually, is to sort of show proof of 25 years of success and the ability to negotiate something as complicated with so many nuances as bipolar.
Right. Well, it took a while in my reading of the book, for you to acknowledge in yourself that there was something going on, something was amiss. And you tell that story really well about being taken to the hospital by your husband, I believe it was, and you thought you were being kidnapped. You yet did not think anything was wrong with you at all. Right. So you thought he was up to no good, but it turned out that that's exactly what you needed to start your journey.
Yeah, it was a tough journey. And I used to think that 25 years ago was very different than now, but I've recently been on a conversation with a student athlete, a graduate who now works in a great job, and he's contacted me. And when he read the book, his medical situation at the hospital was very similar. And
Huh?
that concerned me because the aggressiveness with which I was dealt with was pretty extraordinary and pretty traumatizing.
Mhm.
And I think that to learn that this person had been held down and kind of dealt with in the same way versus being talked down. I mean, I know there are talented psychiatrists out there and people, of mind health that can kind of try to get people to go to in a different space versus the physical nature of being held down and given shots. So I know it's complicated, but I had been told that things were different in this day and age. But this person was diagnosed and dealt with that similar hospital situation just a year ago,
Right.
and
Well,
that concerns me.
do you think there's a gender difference
I don't know. I don't think so.
in the way people feel free to come out? And because I think the story usually goes that women wind up in therapy and go for treatment easier than men do.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
I would agree with your statement because I think as women, as the child bearers and dealing with postpartum, there's more of an acceptance. There's more things going on with women. I mean, gosh, I've had a hysterectomy and everything else, and I always joke with my husband, like, you guys are ridiculous how easy you have it. Like,
oh,
and
really?
no, gosh. I mean, I know that, don't get me wrong. I know there are issues for men. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it just,
Mm,
coming off a mammogram this morning, we've got these hysterectomies. John, my husband, always says, it's always something. And I'm
with
like,
you, is always something with you, or always
well, no,
something?
with women, all the
Yeah.
women issues, the constant things that we have to do. And of course, that's a little tongue in cheek. But getting back to your point, I definitely think there's more acceptance for women. And I think there's different acceptance levels in cultures and what's expected or what's accepted in different cultures.
Clearly, the people you want to talk to are both genders. I understand that. I just wondered if you, being a woman who's out about this issue, whether you experience different reactions from men versus women, or did both genders seem to resonate with what you've gone through? Have you noticed anything in that area?
A combination of resonating, but also too, and dealing with particularly again this gentleman. There was real reticence. I mean, a very strong, athletic human. In
Yeah.
charge of their body. And I believe on the women's side it's the same, especially with athletes. More that concept of you can't believe. I mean, we've trained our bodies for years. And so there might be a little bit of a delineation between student athletes, male and female, and then,
Mhm.
of course, a non-athlete. I definitely think the athletic side of things has helped me cope,
Yeah.
has helped
Yeah.
others cope, and that's very important.
I was wondering if you ever heard of the story about Mackie Sasser.
Mm.
Uh, can I take a minute or two and tell you a little bit about
Yeah.
the story? He was a catcher for the New York Mets, an all-star catcher. And all of a sudden, he couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher. It would go into right field or left field or whatever, and he lost his career as a result of not being able to do the fundamental thing that he probably did millions of times of catching the ball from the pitcher and throwing it back to him. Couldn't do it anymore. So he had eventually lost his career as a catcher as a result, but he ultimately wound up going for treatment with somebody who discovered that there was a trauma that he had disconnected from that got buried and then got triggered.
Mm.
I think there are just things that we separate from, and I just feel like you were clearly, I think you're saying you were not well before you went for help, right? It wasn't like the day before.
Yes,
were
it was
then you
probably,
went.
yeah, it was probably a string of maybe a week or so, relative to sleep. We talk about sleep hygiene, and I
Right.
think a lot of factors have to come together. I mean, I was a young coach. I had given birth, my daughter was almost a year and a little bit, and trying to be a top head coach at 20, 27, 29, that age, I was at the perfect age with enough stress and enough concern in raising a child and also being a coach, not to
And being a
mention,
wife.
yeah, well, yeah, oh, that part too.
Yeah.
And, and the genetic situation, which I was the first, in my family, I mean, the one in my family to be genetically diagnosed. And so it's all part of it. So definitely there were many, many factors. And then you go back to issues that you deal with earlier in life, whatever those are, traumatically, whatever they are, then of course that, like you said, that can disconnect.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing.
No. It's my experience with it is that the emotional experience of what people have gone through need to be connected to the story they tell.
Mhm.
And people could tell a story over and over again, but leave the emotions somewhere else. And the hard part is really getting them to come together. And so it sounds like you're going to be addressing this with, all parts of mental illness based upon these hashtags that you started talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, the
No,
final.
really, I mean,
Yeah.
it's I've done a lot of training, I guess, with trauma, and Bessel van der Kolk is one of my favorite people. He's in Harvard, and he treats trauma specifically, and that's been a focus of my life, is helping people with, and I've learned a great deal about patience and how you have to stick with it as a patient and as the person who's treating them or helping them. You have to stay there. So, and there's something about who you are and how you are that reminds me of somebody who's a therapist. I mean, you just have a way of being present.
Well, I appreciate that. I take that as a huge compliment. And I was going to ask you and turn a question on you
Yeah.
relative to trauma.
Yeah.
And the way I understand it from being on the other side of it is that it really does take time and you have to unpeel the layers, but it can take 10 years, can it not, to get somebody to come to grips, or 30 years. I mean, that something happened so many years ago. I mean, I'm dumbfounded by where that trauma hides.
Oh, where in the body or the mind it's hidden? I wouldn't say it takes 30 years. I'd put it slightly differently. I would say that people get better slowly over that period of time. It's not like they remain mentally disabled or whatever for
Right.
30 years, and then one day they wake up and they go, oh, I'm better now. But thank goodness there's a process that goes on where people become more and more attached to pieces of themselves that they had disconnected with. And that's why, I have great hope for them. It would be very hard to stay as a treating person with someone and see no progress for 20 years or 30 years, and then all of a sudden they're better.
Yeah, I understand.
But
for me,
so
it's a lot of
yeah.
tears, right? Like for me, I sometimes became overwhelmed with going to the therapist
Mm.
and the stream of tears, right? The stream of, but then sort of kind of putting it all back in a little bundle again and walking out the door and going back to regular life,
Yeah.
and then taking the bundle and undoing it again, and and putting the puzzle pieces together. And sometimes I want people to be able to know that yes, that vulnerability is difficult, and it comes with a lot of emotions.
Oh, yeah. And some people are frightened of emotion, and sometimes for good reason, that there's so much that they're afraid they're going to just, bust open and, just not be there anymore. That'll overwhelm their system. But that's why, like you were saying, going slow is so important, and having the patience to sit there hour after hour with somebody and listen to them tell the story at their own pace. And I keep feeling when I talk to you and I see you, I see that ability in you. I'm not telling you to become a therapist. I'm just saying you just have a way about you that is so relaxing that you could just keep making me talk endlessly.
Well, I would love that. I've studied, and of course, all these things, but cognitive behavioral therapy,
Yeah.
and sort of the retooling of negative thoughts and turning them positive. And I've been a beneficiary of such things. And I guess my hope is, the degree I have, so to speak, is the 28 years of coaching.
Yeah.
And how I can apply that. I mean, I don't think I'm going back to be a doctor or psychiatrist, PhD. I don't feel
Your
like
calling is some way different than
I
that.
think I'm a little different. I think I'm on the team. I'm on your team, and I'm on others' team relative to the brain, psychiatry, and all those things. But I think I'm a different kind of member of the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I'm trying to grow, is that awareness to how the team and a coach, and how the coach part comes in.
Yeah, well, I think you're the person who leads the person to the door where the person who's sitting will do the therapy. I think that you'll take them by the hand in a way, and lead them to where they need to go.
And yes, and the other night I had a call, and I really enjoyed these calls and really want to be able to be more available somehow, but phone a coach kind of thing, where a student athlete called, and it was the anniversary of his situation in the hospital. And so and obviously very traumatic for him. And so I said, but I was able to, I don't know, get in a certain space with him. I said, yeah, so, what happened to you? What'd they do? And the way I could ask it, I guess I call it referent power, as somebody who'd been through it. And he told me, and I said, wow, wow, we sound very similar. And, and actually that's the kind of thing that made him relax. It made him tell more of the story. And that's where I found out it was a little bit more aggressive than actually I thought. And then at that point, we started talking about ice cream,
Yeah.
And I know there's got to be a sense of humor with it, right? You've got to have the cognitive behavioral therapy, the restructuring, and then throwing in stuff like, so who are you picking for the Final Four?
Right, just to lighten it a little.
Yeah, you can't have this heaviness, this.
No, I know. It's funny you should mention that, because I did my dissertation on humor, and humor in therapy, actually, in particular. And it was a wonderful journey to do that dissertation. It just so happens that I also was training to deal with people who've been traumatized. So, it's funny how there's a resonation with almost everything you say, and I'm sure that I'm not the only person who will feel that way. I'm sure that people will be very grateful to be led to the place where they need to go. It's really, without that, we have nothing. And so what you're hoping to accomplish is so important
Well, I
to,
appreciate, yeah, it's a daily situation. I really appreciate that energy, because one thing I did do, and I'm asking you, this is sort of a question,
yeah.
is when I finished on the telephone,
Mhm.
first of all, I made sure that it wasn't too long, for about a half an hour, 35 minutes, where, trying to get him to a certain space. But then when I got off the phone, I text him something like, okay, are you picking Houston or Oregon State?
Something where, yeah.
And I guess I don't know what all the words are called in your world, of psychotherapy and training and trauma.
Uh-huh.
But to me, it took a while for him to get back to me. And
Okay.
I kind of waited and
Yeah.
waited, and then I actually, said something like, well, yeah, you should watch the women's side too. I sort of stuck another, I guess I was, baiting him a little bit. And then finally he came back with the humorous answers. And I have to say that I felt better. I felt like,
Like you hadn't hurt him or driven him away, you mean, or something like
well,
that?
just
Or
that I want to make sure he was responsive and keeping in that place of humor. Like, I don't know what the follow-up term would be in psychology. Like, I don't know but to me, it was like a closure cue for that conversation, that we had been kind of been in that space that might be a good space.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So he relieved you of worrying about that?
Well, I just like that last connection to be on a lighter level.
Okay. Maybe we should figure out a way to do that in this conversation. But it's been pretty light and airy. I feel, by the way, I just wanted to let you know, if I could take a moment to talk about the fact that I'm publishing a book too, called Saved by Sport, and people who've been traumatized turning to sport as a way of healing themselves. It's hopefully going to come out in a few months. And I'd love you to send you it, or I'd love you to write a forward to it, obviously. But it's stories of people. It's about 20 stories, almost, of people who've been through traumatic and turned to, various sports, golf, tennis, whatever, to organize themselves in their life and get on a different track. And that's what they did. That's why I was in the middle of writing this book, and when I made contact with you, or you made contact with me, it doesn't even matter. And I keep reading your book. You're taking up a lot of my reading time. I want you to know that. And I tell people about the book constantly. And I feel kind of honored to have you be willing to talk with us about your experience and what you're intending to do. I was wondering, in terms of the listening people, watching people today, how do they follow you?
Yeah.
Because I want people to kind of, like, if they're really turned on by what you're talking about, and they need help or whatever it is, or they know somebody in their family or friends that needs help, do they contact you in particular? They do.
For me right now, I'm Coach P number 4 for life, so Coach P for life.
For life, yeah.
On LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. And
right.
Messaging is very helpful. People reaching out that way. Obviously, social media is not something I love, but I do love the ability. That's where I connected with you on LinkedIn.
Right.
And so, yes, first of all, again, I congratulate you on your book and Saved by Sports. I think that couldn't be more true. And again, stories over trauma,
Yeah, exactly.
What you're looking at. And I would, of course, be honored to write the foreword or be any part of your book. So I can
That's terrific.
I can say that for sure. But I just think, I'm easy to reach. I've got a small team. and it's joannemccallie@gmail.com. And you're like, well, wow, you could, flood your email. But that's the whole point, is trying to get people to take initiative and to be helpful and to manage that. So it's not a big business here. It's a small group of people. I have an agent, a couple people helping me work on different things and talks and things of that nature. So hopefully as we head into fall and things open up a little bit, I would like to be more in person and talking to all sorts of various groups and answering questions and being available that way, because I think that human connection, obviously we've missed it a great deal. And I think that's a big part of people truly coming on board to feel better and to take steps towards their brain health.
I have two ideas. Can I share them with you about where you want to go? One is what's called the 92nd Street Y in New York. And famous people from all different kinds of, really famous, like Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, the great tennis players, and so on. They've given talks at the Y where they have an auditorium of maybe 200-300 people. And they would be, I think, very interested in you coming and telling your story. I don't know if you're up to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think my agent was looking into that, contact wise. But yeah, thank you for that.
Because I'm a member.
Yeah, well, keep talking in your circle.
Well, yeah, I will keep talking because I'm moved by the story and who you are as a person. So I hope that we can continue, and I will continue to brainstorm whatever I got up here and see who else I could come up with if you want me to. Only if you want me to see where I could take it. I'm not the king of the world, but I do my part.
Yeah, well, I know you do, and I would be grateful for any of your ability to extend to people and try to grow this thing further. I'm very hungry to make a difference and to get to the biggest stages of impact, and to try to connect these dots relative to support. And there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot that I need to educate myself about. But I think that trying to be a coach in this process can be very valuable. And so it's Coach P for life.
Right.
And, it's a new world of coaching. And I do miss the connection with the players. One thing as a basketball coach, you always have a new day. And regardless of your day, you're exposed to incredible energy by the women I coached. And I miss that terribly, especially during March Madness. And so
sure.
Yeah, I really do, and but I believe in this coaching, and I believe in this wider effect. I hope, but I also say that I have those lonely days though, where I'm not going to practice, and I'm not going to get that energy, and so I have to get that through people, and sort of it's changing, changed my world a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I don't know if it's kind of a healthy addiction, if you will. I mean, to want that energy around you, and you just have to be, I guess, careful that the energy that you're looking for is not bad energy. It's for good reasons. And I would imagine you getting up in front of many people and talking about this, it could be very energizing for you, but
sure.
You need that people contact.
I think it's important. And there was a term I came across called soul oxygen. Can you oxygenate your soul by yourself? Does your soul require human connection, which I believe they do, but in light of not having that, what's your soul oxygen? I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we've gone about an hour.
Oh God. Oh wow, that went fast.
And I'd love you to hang around some more, but I know that you have probably other things to do. I can only say that I've really enjoyed, in quotes, being with you today. And I hope that we continue to stay in contact with each other, and I can help in any way I can in terms of your
Thank
mission or
you.
cause.
Well, thank you for this time, and I appreciate it. And if it's okay with you, my people
Yes.
and team might try to get in touch to get a copy to see, because this is a longer form. That could be really helpful to us.
Oh,
But I appreciate it. And it's funny, I have to go to the Y. That's my next appointment. Is
oh, really?
I've got my
Today?
swim lane. You know how hard it is to get a swim lane at the Y.
Oh, you're going swimming at the Y.
Yeah, for my workout, flip turns, the whole 9 yards. And
Okay.
but it's funny you say that, because that's my next item as I
Yeah,
as I work on my balance and my physical body keeping in shape.
yeah. Well, you have a lane reserved for a specific time, I guess, right? So
Yes.
I don't want you to miss it. And so why don't we just say adios for now,
Okay.
and we'll be back in touch with each other sometime in the future. But I may ask for that you to write something about the book, because I think you'd be a wonderful it would be a great contribution.
Well, thank you, and good luck with your book. I know we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, and if there's something I could put on my website in sports psychology, I
Okay.
have the magazine. If there's something I can just put up there and keep up there about what how people can get involved in what you're interested in, be glad to put it up there. I'm sure
Okay. That
Joe
sounds
would
like a
help. Joe
plan.
would help with that. Yeah. So anyway, you have a good rest of the day.
Okay. And World Bipolar Day.
Yeah, I'm not forgetting it. I don't know what to do,
Right.
but
Well,
should I act bipolar or something?
I'm going to take a swim.
Okay, I'm
So
going to take a run in the park,
okay, that
in
sounds
Central Park.
perfect. Okay. Take care,
Okay,
Dr. Paul.
you too. Take
Okay.
care, Coach P.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.